When it comes to the sale of e-bikes under $2,000, especially with rear hub motors and throttles, the DTC or direct-to-consumer brands have been seemingly killing it the last couple years, with the bigger brands we're all used to kind of hesitant to join the party. Well, that seems to have changed with this. Meet the Trek FX+1 and 1S. Alright guys, so the Trek FX+1 and 1S. So you're wondering what the difference is? Well, this is the S, and the only difference between the S version and the 1 is the S version reaches speeds of 28 miles an hour. So the FX+1 can be shipped to California and everywhere else, but the FX+1S, or this one that reaches class 3 speeds of 28, cannot be shipped to California, so something to keep in mind if you live there. Now, they say this is their commuter bike, but I also like to think it's kind of a do a lot of things bike. It's got pack mounts up front, it's got 50 mil tire clearance, it's kind of like a gravel grind, weekend ride, or a commuter and fitness bike. It's a lot of purposes outside of just commuting, I would say. Now, it's priced at $19.99, and it's UL 2849 certified as well as 2271 certified. Now, they say this bike weighs 48.3 pounds. I always test these when I get them in here for testing, and it came out here the way it sits right now at 49.9 pounds, so very close to their estimate of 48.3. Now, in terms of frame sizing and configurations, there's two. So this is the high step version and there's a mid step version. Now, in terms of fitment, the high step version fits from 5'1" all the way up to 6'6", and that's based on 4 different frame sizes. Now, I like that Trek does 4 different frame sizes. Most brands do a lot less, and having more frame size options just allows you to dial in a better fit based on your height, rather than trying to conform to a smaller frame or larger frame than you would ideally be fit for. Now, on the high step, you get small, medium, large, and extra large, so all 4 sizes, 5'1" to 6'6". But if you opt for the lower step through version, that one comes in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large, and that fits from 5'1" up to 6'1". So really, a really good range with a lot of variety in the frame sizes. Now, in terms of color, this is the high step, so it comes in this juniper green, or you can get it in a fully black configuration. But if you opt for the mid step, that comes in also juniper green or white. So you can't get black on the mid step and you can't get white on the high step. So they kind of did some mix and match there with the color combinations. Now, in terms of geometry numbers for this specific large frame of the high step, the standover height, kind of at the midpoint of that top tube, is 30 inches. The reach up top is about 15.5 inches. The wheelbase from front hub to rear hub is about 44 inches, and the max payload is 300 pounds. Now, when it comes to wheel and tire sizes, kind of a unique setup that we haven't seen as often here. It's a 650, which is commonly referred to also as a 27.5-inch tire, kind of like you see on mountain bikes or other commuter bikes. And the tire width is a 650 by 50 mil wide. So running a 50 mil width tire, I think, was a really solid idea. That's basically 2-inch wide. So you've got lots of room for volume for air. You can air down, go over rougher terrain like gravel and still be fast and smooth, or you can air it all the way up and also just continue high efficiency, low rolling resistance, and speed. So I like the versatility in the tire setup. They say the max tire size is 50 mil, and as someone who tweaks on my bike a lot, I can tell you I think there might be more room in that frame clearance, but that may void the warranty and things like that. So if you're gonna tweak it, talk to Trek first. Now, in terms of the accessories you're going to get, the bike is going to come ready for fenders, both front and back, rear rack, and pack mounts on the fork legs up front, plus down tube bosses and seat tube bosses that you can just apply your own accessories. So you can really kit it out the way you want, but none of those are going to ship with the bike. They kind of leave it up to you to pick what you want and rig it out based on your style of riding and what you have planned. Now, also in terms of lighting, they really hooked it up there as well. We not only have a front headlight that is super bright, it's an LED light. I think it's about 130 lumen, and that is adjustable in angle. It's also got a tail light built into the seat back here that also acts as a brake light with turn signals you actuate with the buttons up top. Now, when it comes to turn signals, usually designers and brands will come up with turn signals that you click once, turns on, stays on until you click again and turn it off. But Trek pretty smartly programmed this to when you click it, you get your turn signal for about 5 to 7 seconds, and it just kicks off on its own. So if you take a while to turn, you might want to reactivate it. But if you just hit it, turn, and go, you don't have to remember to try to turn it back off, which I thought was really smart. All right, guys, in terms of the motor and power delivery on this, that's where things get really interesting on the Trek FX+1. Back here, we've got a rear hub motor. Now, this motor is rated at 500 watts nominally and 60 Newton meters of torque. And I can tell you, the 60 Newton meters of torque, plus whatever kind of clever programming they have, this feels very, very capable in every scenario I ran it through. You'll see when we go on a ride, it handles hills like a champ, it accelerates well, and I had no trouble getting up to 28 miles an hour in just a few pedal strokes after hitting 20 with the throttle. It's really a well-done motor with plenty of punch for the people who still want their e-bikes to feel like e-bikes. Trek has made bikes in the past that were e-bikes, things like the Elant. That one feels much more like a pedaler's e-bike. It's got a lot more subtle of a motor. You kind of feel it just a little bit doing a job, but you still feel like you're doing most of the work. This, on the other hand, feels like the pretty typical e-bikes that most consumers are looking for when they're looking for an e-bike with a throttle. So if you're worried about that aspect, you don't have to be. It definitely meets your needs when it comes to e-bike power and the expectations you're probably having. Now, in terms of motors, this motor has a few riding modes that are pretty cool. So it's got 3 basic pedal assist modes, which are eco, mid, and high. And as you'd expect, they get progressively stronger as you go through each one. But you can go into the Trek Central app, and it has the feature that they share with other bikes, which is motor tuning, where you can program individually each level, eco to its own settings of pedal response and power percentage, or mid or high, or all 3, just however you want. And then based on what you do with that motor tuning, the bike will respond accordingly, but it'll also use an algorithm to kind of update your range and battery life left. So it's a pretty smart system in general. Now, in terms of the bike's activation, you have the pedal assist with a torque sensor, but the big thing for Trek now is a throttle. It's a very typical push throttle like you see on all e-bikes. And as you'd expect, it works great, getting you to 20 miles an hour before stopping and leaving you to do 20 to 28 should you want class 3 speeds with pedal assist. Now, in terms of the battery, we've got a 48 volt battery fully integrated into this down tube. And this is a 48 volt battery with 10.6 amp hours, giving us 520 watt hours. Now, you might be wondering about range. Well, Trek says you can get up to 50 miles out of this bike, and I got 51 miles in my range test. That was on minimum, but when I went to maximum, I got 30 miles, and that was going basically full blast the whole way. So between 30 and 51 miles is a very solid result, considering those speeds were basically between 14 and over 20 miles an hour. Now, some really cool things about this battery. Well, one is it's fully frame integrated, meaning you can't just drop it and pop it out for safety or for security purposes or for off-the-bike storage, things like that. You will need to leave it inside the bike, but the good news is if you do want to remove it for things like it breaks, repair, servicing, stuff like that, there is an access panel on the bottom where a service tech can certainly remove that, just someone who's qualified to do so. They just don't give you a set of keys to let you drop it however you want. Now, in terms of the battery management system on this, that's where things get really, really cool. So we've talked in the past about how e-bike batteries can be considered a longer life or given a longer life if you tend to not fully charge them and fully deplete them. So taking them down to 0, then charging them back to 100, taking it to 0. That full exhaustion is considered a full cycle, and that is ultimately a cycle that counts against the life of the battery. Now, what they've done is with this smart BMS system is they've allowed you to use kind of a smart charging setting if you want to. You can fully charge to 100 and go to 0, or you can use more of a smart charging feature where you don't let it get past down below 20 and they won't charge it up past 80. And that's just going to keep it in the sweet spot. That's going to give you the bulk of your range and power, but also just extend the life of that battery. But then they've also got more features which we'll look at in the app, like long-term storage charging, trickle charging, things that are just going to keep this battery healthy for longer and ultimately give you more bike for longer. Now, in terms of warranty information, the battery and the components on the bike are a 2-year warranty. And the cool thing about Trek is their frames, their Alpha Series aluminum, this is a lifetime warranty. So if you're the original owner of the bike, this is the lifetime warranty on the frame and then 2 years on the motor, battery, and components. Now, before we jump into the components, I want to touch on kind of a new feature that they added to their charging system. So you see this circle here on the down tube with the kind of metallic face to it. That's what they call their EasyMag charging. Now, you may hear the word mag and it might sound familiar. That's because if you have an iPhone, you're probably familiar with MagSafe charging, where it's a magnetic connector. You don't need to line up any certain way or worry about any pins getting bent. You simply attach the charging face of the EasyMag charger. It magnetically slaps on in any direction or orientation, and it seamlessly seamlessly will charge the bike. Then it's connected to their smart battery system, which the charger itself comes with a wall mount, which sounds very simple, but it's something I wish we saw a lot more brands do. That keeps your charger off the floor, keeps you from tripping your cords, a mess in the garage. This just goes up on the wall with a mount, but the beauty of it is you can slide it off. It's a detachable face mount, so you could bring this charger with you if you need to and still have your mount face at at home to put it back on when you get home. Really smart system with a nice visual ring on the outside that shows you the current level of charging. Just a really nice system that I hope we see brands kind of level up their charging systems to try to compete with something like what Trek did here. Now, so starting with components in the back, we've got a nice setup here. It's an 8-speed setup using Shimano's new ESSA. Now, if you've not heard of ESSA, I had to do a little digging because it's the first time getting a bike that has it. And it's essentially Shimano's answer for their fitness and lifestyle bikes, where you don't need something performance driven and you don't need something super bottom barrel. This is gonna have some nice features that they don't have at the bottom end, but it's also gonna not just waste money with super high-end materials like magnesium and titanium when you get up to like an XTR or a higher end Di2 stuff. So in a case like this, we've got an ESSA 600 rear derailleur. Now, it has the shadow technology, which Shimano calls kind of a proprietary name for an improved spring tension and ultimately less chain drops. You often hear me talk about, I wish they would use clutch derailleurs or have some sort of way to deal with spring tension on these chains, because if you take a bike off-road, one of the first things you're gonna hear is that chain slapping around if there's not enough tension on it. And that kind of answers that solution there without giving you a really high-end derailleur and have to worry about buying one. Now, on top of that, we've got an 11 to 45 HG cassette in the rear and a 40-tooth chainring up front. It's a really solid range that will tackle almost anything you can think about, especially with the E-system. I'm pretty confident you won't have any terrain that you feel you won't be able to tackle with this kind of setup. Now, on the cranks, we have 170mm alloy cranks with some flat Bontrager pedals. They are plastic pedals, have some slight traction studs on them, and some reflectors for visibility. Now, the braking system on here is provided by Rush. It is a 2-piston caliper braking setup with 180mm rotors, both front and back, with a thickness of 1.8mm. Now, in terms of the braking performance, I had not used Rush brakes before. They stopped perfectly fine, like any other braking system you kind of see these days. They serve on par with most bikes at this price point, and I had no complaints out of the brakes at all. Now, moving up to the saddle here, you can see the brake light set up here on the bottom. It hangs into the micro adjust seat rails here that you can move forward and aft for a better fit. This is their Bontrager Sport saddle. I thought it was kind of stiff for my rides, but saddles are super subjective to the person and their body, so you may feel very differently about it, or you may agree. That's kind of up to you to figure out. Moving up to the front, we have a Bontrager stem here. It's a 90mm stem with a 7-degree rise and a 31.8mm bite. Now, in the front, you may see we don't have any cables hanging off anywhere. That's because Trek has opted to use fully internally routed through the headset cables, keeping everything nice and clean and just getting rid of all those bunched up cables we often see hanging off the front. Now, in terms of the cockpit, on the bar here, it's an alloy bar, 720mm wide with a 15-degree slight rise to it. On both ends, we have Bontrager Ergo platform grips that lock on so they don't slide as you kind of move and do things. And then on the right side here, we have our turn signal buttons, which, like I said earlier, you only need to hit once and they will auto off, which is a nice feature. We have our trigger shifters here with an 8-speed window so you know what gear you're in. Both sides have the Rush alloy brake levers, which probably one point of complaint for me. You might be able to hear it, might not, but basically there's a little bit of play. It's not that they're falling out or an install issue. It's just a little bit of, I guess, tolerance or clearance that's left over where they mount the levers. And so when you're riding on rougher terrain, you may hear these rattle. Just something to keep in mind. Now, on the left side, we do have the throttle here. It's a pretty typical e-bike push throttle. And we have our display that manages your PAS controls and some sub-menus. So let's take a closer look at the display now, and then we'll jump into the Trek Central app and talk about some of the fun features in there too. All right, so this is the home screen, or the basics of the display layout. On here, we have all the basic metrics you're gonna need when you're riding. So up in the top left, we've got our time of day. The top right, the Bluetooth indicator lets us know we're paired to the app. Next to that is the headlight indicator, which if I hold the plus button, will turn that headlight off. And as you can see, you can just simply turn it back on by holding the plus button again. That will kind of control your lighting while you're riding the bike. Now down below that, we have our battery bar meter at 86% with a numerical as well. In the middle is our speed, which of course you can change between kilometers or miles if you want to. And then it estimates range, but you'll notice it's quite different than the app. And I've noticed that's because the one on the display seems to be, and I could be wrong, but it seems to be more dynamic. It's watching what I'm doing while I'm riding, and it's actually updating real time while I'm riding. So when I get on the bike, it may say 19 miles left, but depending on how I'm riding, it may say in about 10, 12 miles, oh, you have 26 miles left, or it kind of does numerically math while you're riding the bike. But if you're unsure if that makes you nervous, you can always jump into the app, and the app has a really good estimated range that also kind of updates real time. So it's a really cool system with a couple ways to view how your range is left. Now to activate PAS up and down, it's the simple up and down on the control pads here, which ultimately will change the range it's showing left at the time. Now you've also got buttons like a mode button down here. You can tap it and see a different metric like the odometer, tap it again, see the range, and just toggles between those two. Now you can also get into some settings here. You can hold the menu button and that will take you to some extra settings. There's not a ton, but some basics you will need. So like screen brightness. Now this is really important. So on this display, it's showing a screen brightness of 1, which happens to be the brightest number. But I had a couple cases when I was riding in the middle of the day under direct sunlight where when the sun hit it directly, it would completely wash out the display and it would look almost like it was off. And I would have to change the angle of the handlebars or change my head angle to see what was on the display. But in fairness, that only happened a couple times and it was only under certain lighting conditions. But just be aware that maybe middle of the day when the sun's right above you, that may wash out your display just a little bit. But you can always change the angle of the display or just turn your handlebars to get that view back. Now moving down here to units, that's where you switch between miles per hour and kilometers per hour. And then you have error codes should you have an error. And other than that, that kind of just takes up all the basic settings on this display. Back to your home screen. All right, so this is the home screen of the Trek Central app when you pair it to your FX Plus. And this app is also used across most of their other e-bikes as well that are app enabled. So let's just do a quick walkthrough of what we got here. So right here is the home screen, and this is going to give you just a quick view of everything. So right up here, it just says the bike is ready to ride. The battery's at 86%. The Let's Ride button here will initiate GPS ride tracking. The tune your motor, we can go into here, and that's where we talked about tuning the motor to your kind of whatever preference you want to play with. You can go full on everything, or you can dial things back. You can kind of just play with it how you want, save it, and then apply it to the bike. And when you do so, that will kind of change the range estimation. They will do some smart computing and figure out your new range based on your new settings. Now, I do just keep things at default. I'll hit I'm sure here. It'll say applying changes. And any minute now, there we go. The display says all good. And then the app should clear here in just a second. We're doing an update on the display side and we're back. So I'll back out of here. And if you go to the navigation side, that will take you to the maps feature. We'll go back to the dashboard. If you hit ride right here, that will change the home screen on this to act as your display while you're riding. If you see I hit the pedal assist button here, that changes to eco mode, saying I have basically 54 miles left on eco setting and I have 22 miles left on throttle setting, and you can record your ride. And if we were traveling right now or pedaling the bike, we would get real-time metrics here like speed and things like that. Now, if we go back to the dashboard here, go to ready to ride, you can see here the range estimations. All right, and then down below that, we have our recommended tire pressures. This is a really cool feature. A lot of people don't really know what tire pressure to put in their bike, and it really matters depend on your body weight, the type of riding you're gonna do, and then the volume or ability of the tire itself to hold air. So they've kind of figured that out for you. You just go into here, hit the little gear icon, you put in your rider weight. So I put in 175 pounds, and it says the recommended tire pressure is 38 in the front and 44 in the rear. But then it gives you things like minimum, maximum, and then what they call the perfect tire pressure. And you can customize those settings. So it's really got a lot of features in there where you can kind of just play with it and see what you want to do to the bike. Now backing out of that, going down here, you can see the odometer says we have about a little over 90 miles on here, and then you can go to a service recommendations page of the bike. Here you can disconnect the bike, but let's go to the next tab over. That's going to be the map. You can plan your rides in here, track your rides, and see the map of your local area. I really like that they've added terrain features here, so you can see where there's hills, elevation changes, and that just makes your ride planning a little bit cooler, and you know what to expect along your route. These little barriers here kind of let you know how far you could get based on your range settings, which is also really cool. But we'll back out of that. If you want to record with it, you could record those as well. Here we'll go to history. Now, had I been using this to do all my rides, it would record those rides here, but I use Strava for tracking purposes of our data. So when you own the bike, if you use the ride tracking feature, you'll get a list of your previous rides here. Then you can go over to settings and you can go back to some of those specific things like motor tuning, which we were just in, the pressure calculator. My bike will give you things like let you name it, give you the serial number and firmware numbers. And then they also have a really cool feature here that lets you pair a new device. So things like SRAM components or AirWiz. But they also have things like connect a different bike. A lot of brands lock you into one bike per app, which can be really annoying depending on your setup. Maybe you own more than one at your house. I own several, and having the ability to put different bikes in one app is a really nice feature. Then we talked about the battery settings. So this is really, really cool. So you can do things like get charge alerts on your bike to let you know when you're reaching a certain level you need to charge. You can go to extended life mode, that mode we talked about earlier where it keeps it at certain thresholds to extend the life of the battery. You can do optimized charging, you can do long-term storage charging, and then get all your battery metrics here. As the battery ages, you'll kind of know the status of it. Very, very smart system, and I hope we see more brands doing that. So we'll back out of here. Here you can go down to your profile, that's just your basic user info. Connected devices, so you can connect other devices that we talked about. Navigation settings, map settings, just some basic GPS and navigation stuff, and then the app info itself, or you can completely log out. But that makes up the bulk of the Trek Central app. A lot of cool features, a lot of customization, and a lot of things to help enhance the riding experience and the longevity of your bike. So really well done with the Trek Central app. All right, guys, we're out on the new FX+1S. That's quite a mouthful for a name, but it's essentially the 28 or class 3 version, 28 mile an hour version of the new Trek FX Plus series of commuter bikes. And when you get on this, the riding position is, it's a very true hybrid, almost mountain bike-ish feel, flat bar gravel bike feel, or just kind of sleek, fast city commuter bike. You are going to be leaning forward into the flat bar here. Your hands rest on the Bontrager lock-on platform grips, and it's a comfortable ride. But the big thing is, this is Trek's foray into throttles, rear hub motors at this sub 2,000 price point. So let's talk about how the motor feels, how the ride feels, and just what you can expect. So a couple things. The throttle's limited to 20 like you would expect, and the bike will pedal assist to 28. Let's do a quick test of that throttle. I'm gonna get on the flat ground up ahead, and we'll just check and see how it does from a standstill to 20 miles an hour, and then I'll continue beyond that, pedaling to 28, so we can get an idea of the speed in general. All right, just a second. All right, so I'm gonna stop here. Also going to change it to high mode. All right, so from a dead stop, 3, 2, 1. This is all throttle. 10, 11, 13, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So pretty quick there off the line. Not overly fast, but definitely enough pep for any kind of just typical bike riding situation or commuting situation. But let's go beyond that to 28. And that's where you see that torque sensor picks up really quick your effort, and it very quickly adapts to what you're looking for. And I was able to hit that max pretty fast. Now you might be noticing some things, or maybe you can't. I don't know what you can fully see on screen, but in high mode it says I only have 13 miles left. And when I go to low mode or eco mode, it says I have 27 miles left. But I found there's a nuance to that. It's kind of gauging what's happening as I'm riding, my riding style, my riding behavior, and it's adjusting that real time. If we were to ride for another 20 minutes, that would probably be much higher. So if you want to know what accurately you have left, we'll take a look at the app here. Let me just pull over. So here we're going to the app, go to dashboard, and see in eco mode I have 62 miles left. In mid I have 44, and in high I have 36. And if I use only throttle, 26 miles. So that's what I would gauge your remaining distance off, and I found it to be really, really accurate. But let's keep riding and see how this does on the hills. All right, so up ahead there's a small punchy, like 9% grade. We'll just shoot up on throttle and see how much speed we lose. And then right after that, we'll go into the neighborhood and do a more sustained quarter-mile climb. But it's at like a 5 to 7% grade. It kind of varies. On the way there, we might want to check these brakes too. Let's get up to speed. do a quick stop on the brakes. The brakes are made by Rush. They're hydraulic disc brakes with 180 millimeter rotors, 1.8 millimeter thickness, and 2 piston calipers. All right, so from 20 miles an hour to a quick stop, 3, 2, 1. So very solid braking, no issues there. Kind of as you'd expect. The 1x8 Shimano drivetrain is a mix of an Altus trigger shifters and the new Q's or ESSA rear derailleur. What's nice about it is it has what Shimano calls shadow technology, but really just means you have more spring tension with less chain slaps and chain drops. All right, so we're going up this 9%er. And so we went from about 19 or 20 to 16. I saw it at its lowest. You get the other speedometer back up. And then we'll go to this neighborhood and do the same thing on a bigger climb and see how it holds 20 miles an hour on throttle going up that. One thing I was surprised on this is the motor's punchier than expected. I thought this would be a little bit more reserved. It's not crazy fast like you saw on the Throttle, but when you're using pedal assist, it's definitely there. It's noticeable. It's not, I think it's something a lot of people are gonna like, actually. Let's go in here and let's just throttle up this hill all the way, about a quarter mile. So we're accelerating up the hill without any issues. 18, 19, still accelerating 20. So we're maxed out on throttle. We haven't dropped at all. There we go, we dropped to 19, but back to 20, 19. So we're kind of bouncing around there. What you don't hear is the motor. It's just quiet. It's there, you can kind of, if you listen for it, you can hear it, but just the wind in your ears is louder than the motor. One thing I like is that they included front to back lighting too. So I've got turn signals, headlight, brake lights, tail lights, got everything I need. So when I'm on a city street like this and I want to turn up in the neighborhood, I can just hit this right arrow button and turn on that turn signal, which I believe will also show on the display. So let's turn it on now. There we go. Maybe you can see it on the display. It's flashing. It's also flashing underneath my saddle towards the traffic behind me. I'll make my turn and then I'll just turn it off. And we are back on the road. So one thing that I thought was probably one of the, well, there's a lot of cool features on this bike, and that's what I like about Trek doing it, is you know that they've got so much time in the business that they're not a startup and they're not working their way up. They know what they're doing with bikes, and so they put some cool technology on here, while I think other brands have to worry about lower hanging fruit. And some of that I'll explain in just a minute. Keep a turn signal here. We're clear. So something really cool about the turn signal feature on this bike. From what we've seen so far from bikes that offer turn signals, they generally, well, so far all of them have stayed on unless you re-click the button to turn it off. Well, Trek, the way they programmed it, it stays on for about 5-7 seconds and then it turns off. I don't know how exactly long it stays on, but it's long enough for you to make the turn and still let traffic safely know. And then you don't forget about turning it back off. You don't have any beeps yelling at you. Kind of a smart system there. But on top of that, they've got the battery management system. You know, a lot of things we've already talked about in the previous parts of the review, but they just come to mind when I think of cool parts of this bike. But when riding it, one of the cooler parts is it's like adventure ready. And when I say adventure ready, take that with a grain of salt. I don't mean go send it down, you know, a mountain bike single track. What I mean is 50 mil tires are big, high volume, cushy tires. They're perfect for gravel rides, light off-road terrain. And then when you factor in, it's already got mounting holes for fenders, front and back, and a rear rack. And then on the carbon legs up front, you've got mounting holes for like bike packing bags or fort packs. So you could really just rig this out from everything to your daily commuter to work and school to weekend gravel rides or bike packing trips. It's just kind of super universal. I think, you know, they knew what they were doing when they built this one, and I think it kind of shows in the execution. It seems like a lot of bike for the money. So yeah, let's go back and look at it though from a mechanic standpoint and just talk about some things that you should know from an owner standpoint that aren't quite clear when you're just looking at a website and thinking about buying one. We'll talk about some of the under the hood stuff and just things you should know about. All right guys, so let's talk about the FX+1S from more of an ownership standpoint, a maintenance standpoint, maybe some things you haven't considered when you're looking at the bike on a website and you might not realize until you own the bike that should just be a good heads up. I'm gonna go over some things that are really positive about this compared to some other bikes on the market, and then I'll go over some things that I would say could be improved or just some things you should definitely be aware of because it could just kind of impact that total ownership experience. So I'm gonna kick it off with some of the good because there's lots of good things here. The best thing about a Trek bike is it's made by Trek and it's done really well. So first things first, this is part of the new Shimano Q's lifestyle component drivetrain setup. This not only shifts well, but it's something you can find at almost any bike shop you go to. There's a Trek dealer probably in your town right now, and if there's not one in your town, there's one nearby. This is not something you can take the bike into the shop that you got from an online brand and the shop says, ooh, we don't want to touch those bikes, we've never seen those before, we don't know some of those parts, they're third party, they're proprietary, or they're just off-label, off-brand stuff. Everything on here is stuff that you can find the equivalent or the actual part itself at your local bike shop, and they'll be able to service your bike and know it and trust it and not have any questions when you drop it off. It's a Trek bike, they're used to it, they're ready for it. Now on top of that, Trek added some really cool features with their new EasyMag battery charging. So think MagSafe like your iPhone, but now for your e-bike. This is just gonna give you really easy access. You don't really need to line it up or turn it a certain way or worry about pulling pins or anything like that or bending pins when you're connecting it or disconnecting it. It snaps on magnetically, snaps off magnetically, super easy and intuitive to use. But beyond that, Trek went a mile further than the rest of the industry right now, and they added this extra programming capabilities through the battery management or BMS system, which is just going to improve the longevity and life of your battery. So it's going to allow you to set parameters like, never going below 20%, never charging above 80%, long-term storage charging, winter charging, things like that. That's going to ultimately just give some optimal programming and charging conditions for this battery to just further extend that life and not impact the life cycles or the charge cycles of the batteries as quickly, and ultimately just more life of the battery. And then finally, I like on this, so generally we'll see, one set of mounting positions on a seat tube, maybe one on the down tube or vice versa. Sometimes we'll see both like this, but Trek went a pretty far mile ahead here. So we've got two on the bottom, we've got two on the down tube, two on the seat tube, rear rack mounting points, and we don't see this often, but I wish we would see it more often. It is fork mounting points for the fork. You can now attach bags and racks or gear to this bike. So you could really, in theory, kit this out for whatever you want, everything from daily commuting or all the way out to multi-day bike packing trips. You could kind of do multiple things with a setup like this. It's really, really versatile, and with 50 mil tires like this, it's just a bike that can do a little bit of anything within reason, so it's a pretty solid setup. Now, outside of that, some things that I would say might be a headache for you or some things that maybe you just didn't see coming and might want to know before you purchase it. The first things first is, of course, we have this nice integrated frame battery. There's no access points for the battery for the consumer. You're not gonna get a set of keys with this to drop it and take it off for security or for storage in the winter. This battery is in the bike. Now, don't be too freaked out because there is an access point for service technicians and someone who's qualified to remove it, repair it, service it, whatever they have to do. So it's not like it's stuck in there permanently, but for you, the everyday consumer interacting with the bike, you're just not going to be able to pull it off and put it on or take it off for security purposes like you can with many other e-bikes. So that's something to consider. Now, on top of that, we also have really clean internally routed headset cabling, which looks really nice. We don't have any of those big junky cables hanging off anywhere, making the bike look kind of just unkept. They kept everything really sleek and smooth on here. The only downside to it, and I can say it's probably the only downside I can think of, is that as someone who works on my own bikes and has taken my bike to bike shops before, when you do have internally routed cabling like this through the headset, generally you can expect to pay maybe an extra hour of labor because the mechanic's going to have to kind of feed those in and out and deal with it. It just is a little bit more work for the mechanic, and ultimately might just be passed on to you with an extra hour or so of labor. And then finally on here was the display. So the display is great. There's nothing wrong with the display in terms of how it performed. I was able to read all my metrics. Everything was fine with it. But there was a couple situations midday riding where the sun was really high over my left shoulder, and I would look down at my display while I was riding and I would see nothing. And I thought a couple times it was off, which felt weird because I knew it was on because I was getting the pedal assist. But what was happening is certain angles, this display can be washed out by direct sunlight. Now, it didn't happen a lot and it didn't happen for long, meaning that when it happened, I could just move my head or turn the bike a little bit, and it would kind of come back into focus. But in certain lighting conditions, I live in a desert climate, a desert area with a lot of sunlight, and midday riding, I did see this display kind of just get washed out completely where it looked like it was off. Those are the kind of things you're not going to see when you're looking at a bike on maybe a showroom floor, not under direct sunlight, or maybe you're not going to realize when you're surfing the web and searching for these, shopping for them and clicking buy that bike. So hopefully that just sheds some light on kind of the good and the bad, or the good and the maybe things you wouldn't have known just without looking and touching and riding it yourself. That doesn't become a surprise once you get home. But all in all, Trek did a really good job on the bike. It rides really, really nicely, and I think most people will be very, very happy with it. All right, guys, so there you have it, the new Trek FX+1S and the One. Remember, the difference between the One and the 1S is essentially whether or not you live in California and want to be limited to 20 miles an hour. If you want the 20-mile-an-hour version, they can ship that to California, and if you want the 1S 28-mile-an-hour version, that will go everywhere else. Now, in terms of the bike itself, it was really fun to ride. I love the 50 mil tire clearance that gives this bike a lot more versatility without going crazy big, full-on fat tire or super narrow commuter tire. It's a very nice balance of comfort and still having capability. Now, in terms of the mounting points, you can really do anything you want with this bike. You've got front and back fenders, rear rack mounting points, and the fork arms have pack mounts as well. So you can do everything from commuting to work with your gear, maybe leaving it bare for a fitness or recreation bike, or fully kitting it out with bike packing gear and taking off for a weekend adventure. It's got a lot of personality and flexibility when it comes to that. Now, I got over 50 miles of range. I love the new motor and the peppy throttle system on it. It's fun to ride. It had no trouble tackling hills I was on. And aside from some slight complaints like the display getting washed out in direct sunlight and the slight rattle from the brake levers, all in all, it's a really well done bike, especially when you consider the new BMS technology, or that battery management system that gives you smart charging, long-term storage charging, the wall-mounted feature, and their EasyMag easy on and off connector for the charging. It's just a really cool setup that I think in this under $2,000 price point, or right at $19.99 price point, it's just going to send a shot across the bow to other brands out there and kind of raise the bar for everybody on what consumers expect at this price point. So I was really happy to see it. Now, if I missed anything about this bike and you have questions, just drop them down below. I'll do my best to figure it out and get back to you personally so you have that information. And until the next review, we'll see you guys out on the trail.